Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Korach. And in Parshas Korach we read of one of the most overwhelming rebellions in Jewish history. Korach rebels against the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. He rebels against the leadership of Aaron, but in essence, he's rebelling against God himself. Korach exploited the general sense of disillusionment and depression and hopelessness that Klal Yisrael was feeling in the aftermath of the sin of the spies. Remember again, just last week's parasha, spies come back, deliver their disastrous report, we accept it, and Kodesh Baruch Hu condemned us to dwell and ultimately an entire generation to die in the desert. There's pervasive disillusionment, hopelessness, a sense of Yeush, and Korach swoops right in and he takes advantage of it. And Chazal in general, the Mefarshim, are bothered by Korach. Why? Korach was not just some guy. Korach was righteous. Korach was holy. Korach was a member of one of the most prestigious Levitic families. He was responsible, together with his other family members, for transporting some of the most sacred aspects of the Mishkan. Korach, what happened? What happened to you? So Rashi HaKadosh understands that really Korach felt that he was passed over for a promotion. He should have been in charge of his particular family, or at least he felt he should have been in charge. He should have been promoted to a position of prominence, but he was passed over. He's passed over, and this leads him to really rail against Moshe Rabbeinu. You're power grabbing Moshe. You're the prophet. Moshe Rabbeinu essentially was the king, and Aaron, your brother, he's the high priest. And you left the rest of us out in the cold. You peripheralized us. You marginalized us. So Korach leads this rebellion. But the truth is, it's hard to understand what's unfolding over here. Because if we understand that Korach was a tzaddik, as Chazal, as the rabbis teach us he was, and remember again, Korach in fact does have a very righteous descendant, a man by the name of Shmuel Hanavi, the prophet Samuel, the Navi of Klal Yisrael, the one who anointed David HaMelech. So again, this was the family of Korach. So Korach, what happened? What happened? I got it, you were passed over for the promotion. But first of all, just even think about this for just a moment. You're going to lead a rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu? You see what happened in last week's parsha by the Meraglim. Just a little while ago, when people rebelled against Moshe, it doesn't end well. It never ends well. So what are you doing? Or better stated, Korach, what is it that's bothering you so much that caused you to launch this rebellion? And my mother, she's living me well, lent me, I actually kept it for a couple of years, a book a number of years ago called Irina's Children. It was a book about Irina Sendler. This was a Polish woman who lived from 1910. She passed away just in 2008. She lived in Warsaw, Poland. And this woman was a righteous Gentile. She was a tzaddikas. During the war, she was in the Warsaw ghetto. She was a seamstress. And she would come in and out of the ghetto, and she had a false bottom on the box of her sewing supplies, and she would smuggle out Jewish babies out of the ghetto. And larger children she would put in a burlap sack and take them out of the ghetto. Over the course of the war, Irina Sendler saved 2,500 Jewish children. She recorded all of their names, put it in a glass jar, buried it by a tree, because after the war, she was hoping to try to reunite these children with their families. But alas, most of them had their families obliterated by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam v'Zichram. So what's interesting to note is, at least the story is told that in 2007, Irina Sendler was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And you have to understand, this woman was caught by the Nazis. She was beaten, she was tortured, her legs were broken. But despite the fact that the Nazis seemed to know what she was doing, but couldn't dig up like actionable proof, she kept on doing it, trip after trip, saving 2,500 Jewish children. Can you imagine how many thousands of people that is today because of this Polish woman, because of this righteous Gentile? So in 2007, she's nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, but she didn't get it. She didn't get it. In fact, that was the year that Al Gore got the Nobel Peace Prize for global warming. She didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's interesting. It's interesting to note that you wonder to yourself, so a woman like Irina Sendler, selflessness, literally self-sacrifice, ready to give her life to save Jews. This was a Polish Gentile woman. And yet again, the world, for whatever the reason, didn't recognize this accomplishment as something meaningful. So there's a tremendous statement by the Chovos HaLevavos. The Chovos HaLevavos says, he says, the things that you do in this world, the good things that you do in this world, that people know and people see, you get rewarded for in this world. But the good things that you do in this world that no one knows about, those are the things that you get rewarded for in Olam Haba in the world to come. And they think that at the end of the day, maybe for like an Arina Sandler, what she did was so dramatic and so overwhelming that what is she gonna do with a Nobel Peace Prize? What is she gonna do? How could that prize possibly reflect the enormity of what she did? Because there are things that you do in this world that are just, they're too big for recognition. They're too big for comprehension. They're too big for any type of accolade or any type of award or reward that could be offered in this world. There are certain things that are just so profound that they're saved, and they're saved for the world to come. And perhaps this is where Korach went wrong. See, Korach was a righteous man. Korach was a tzaddik. And at the end of the day, he was living a good life and he was doing good things. He was literally, again, responsible for transporting the home of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from one location to another. He was part of Shevet Levi, the tribe itself that are responsible for the spiritual sustenance of the Jewish people. But what bothered him? What bothered him was, perhaps, no one knew about it. No one knew about it. No one knows my name. No one knows. He looked at Moshe. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, you say Moshe, everybody knows who you're talking about. He split the sea, he faced down Pharaoh, he went up to the mountain to receive the Torah, he advocated for us in the aftermath of the sin of the golden calf by the spies. Moshe, Aaron is the Kohen Gadol. And he looked at these positions, and what he saw were these positions represented acknowledgement of a life well lived. Moshe Rabbeinu's position represented and broadcasted to everyone that here is a man who was living up to his potential. The Kohen Gadol, the highest spiritual office in the land. Look at what he's accomplished. And Korach felt so small next to these individuals. Korach thought, if no one knows what I'm doing, then does it really matter? If no one knows what I'm accomplishing, then am I really having an effect? Korach felt small because he felt there wasn't the recognition. He felt insignificant because he felt he did not have a position that broadcasted all of his accomplishments. But here is Korach's profound mistake and his profound personal failure. That you don't need a position that broadcasts your accomplishments to be living a meaningful life. You don't need an exalted portfolio and for everyone to know your personal spiritual greatness in order to know that you are making a difference in this universe. You know, the same community of humanity that would not award Arina Sandler a Nobel Peace Prize for whatever the reason, does that make a difference? So she didn't get the accolades. She didn't get the public recognition. Probably most people who are learning with us tonight probably even never heard of her. But Lamaisa, who could imagine the thousands upon thousands of beautiful Yiddish families who owe their very existence to this woman who pretty much lived and died in total anonymity. This was the mistake of Korach. You don't need publicity in order to accomplish a lot. And you don't need a public platform in order to accomplish a lot. All you need is a genuine heart and a genuine soul. All you need is a proper spiritual work ethic that pushes you to do more and to be more each and every day. The world knows, the world doesn't know. The community knows, the community doesn't know. Your family knows, your family doesn't know. Doesn't make a difference. Korach thought the only way to make a difference was to hold a position of prominence where everyone knows your name and everyone knows what you're doing and everyone knows your accomplishments and everyone knows you went up on Har Sinai or everyone knows you go into the Holy of Holies of Yom Kippur. But he was mistaken. Great accomplishment in life does not need a public communal platform. It just needs a desire to grow, a desire to give, and a desire to constantly strive to be the best version of yourself. You know, dear friends, I think about this a lot. On one hand, this was a pretty dramatic week. It began with the American strike on Iran, and which, again, we're sure shifted the entire dynamic over here and aligned the world's greatest military superpower with our homeland, with our nation, with our people, which is incredible by itself. And the peace, hopefully, and the ceasefire will hopefully endure. And Amirat Hashem Halavai, we should get back our hostages, and this war should come to an end. Be it just today, on Wednesday of this week, 7 precious soldiers died al Kiddush Hashem. And you know, when you read about them and you learn about them, and you read the articles about their funerals and their eulogies, and you realize that, like, these were people, these boys, they weren't even men, they were boys, children, really, really children, but children who were more mature than most adults. And the truth is, like, they didn't have any exalted positions. This was not the chief of staff, this was not the prime minister, this was not the mayor, this was not the politician, no one even knew their names, except their families, until today. Now we know it because their names are part of headlines. But no one knew it before. But Chavra, can we imagine the impact that these neshamas had in this world? Could we imagine what they did for Am Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael? You don't have to have a position of prominence to accomplish something great. You just have to have a willingness to push yourself forward and to do. Korach did not understand what Irina Sendler understood, and Korach did not understand what these 7 precious soldiers understood. There's a lot of greatness that could occur even in anonymity. There's a lot of personalistic accomplishment that could occur even without portfolio. And there's a lot of life transcendence and contribution that occurs even if no one ever knows about it. We so often go through life and we look at other people, oh, everyone knows about this one's accomplishment, that one's accomplishment, look at this. And sometimes, to be honest, we're a little bit jealous. We're like, that person has their name in lights. Everyone knows them. Everyone hears about them. Everyone listens to them. Or everyone knows some part of their accomplished life. And me, I kind of just live in the shadows. And sometimes we feel less than, or we feel inadequate. Dear friends, I would venture to say that some of the greatest things in this world happen by people whose names we will never know. I was thinking about this, I'm sure like many of us, been fascinated by these B-2 bombers. We'll probably never know the pilots' names, right? Or for that matter, again, all of these beautiful, holy Jewish pilots who've been flying all of these missions, who whenever you see them, they don't even give their names, their faces are obscured. But yet, these are men and women who are changing the course of history. Yet no one will ever know their identity. And what about the tens of thousands, Baruch Hashem, who are Lomdei Torah, providing spiritual sustenance for Klal Yisrael every day? Probably not know their names either. There are so many Jews day in and day out that are giving b'sifra u b'saifa, with the sefer, with the sword, who are making contributions to Klal Yisrael in all kinds of ways. And yet at the end of the day, we'll never know their name because we don't have to. Because you don't need publicity to make a difference. And you don't need your name in lights to shift the course of history. The tragedy of Korach is that he felt he needed a position. He needed an office. He needed a title in order to do something. But it was profoundly incorrect. So dear friends, let us never underestimate the power that we have to not only change ourselves, to not only change our lives, and to not only change our own immediate surroundings, but to make a global and, dare I say, universal impact. And even if no one ever knows what you did, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. And isn't that the most important thing in the world? So may we be Zoch Amirat Hashem to find courage, like our holy pilots, to find courage like an Irina Sendler, to find courage like these 7 precious neshamas who gave their lives al Kiddush Hashem Am Va'aretz, and make our own contribution, knowing that no matter who knows, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. And I know that my contribution will somehow make myself and the world a little bit better and a little bit holier. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.